Hey everyone, today we are going to take a look at real-time sentiment analysis with a Next.js application with a FastAPI implementation and also a terminal implementation. This is roughly how it works. Every two messages, we get instantaneous and real-time sentiment analysis as far also as along with how many messages are sent and the duration of the chat. If we were to refresh this and start over again, we can see that messages are being accumulated, the seconds are ticking. I say I feel so sad, then we get a sentiment analysis every two messages. Same is true with the FastAPI implementation. This time we are getting the sentiment analysis every message. I feel so happy, let's say. And we get an immediate sentiment analysis along with messages and time elapsed. Same is true in the terminal implementation, except when we are chatting, the sentiment analysis is completed in parallel and written to a text file. Let's say I feel so happy. And this time in the terminal implementation, they accumulate. User expressed happiness and the tone of the response was upbeat and supportive. So this actually includes a lot of little jewels. You can maybe think of this as a template where we are keeping track of multiple real-time variables, including a sentiment analysis. You can imagine, doing summaries or entity extraction. So once we're going to review the code, and once you see how it works, I believe you should be able to implement it for your own use case. But like I said, we'll be talking about three Next.js FastAPI implementation in a single file where we're serving the HTML directly from the FastAPI app and the terminal implementation. All the code files for this project will be available at my Patreon. The terminal and FastAPI implementation will be available at the $30 tier level. And all the files, including Next.js, will be available at the architect level. Link will be in the description. So just a quick few observations. As you can see, the Next.js app just looks absolutely beautiful and everything about it is just so great. As a matter of fact, you can see it's entirely responsive where the side panel collapses. It's just with Next.js, you're just able to build so much better apps. I wish I could make this Fast API app look as good, and you can, as a matter of fact, but since we are able to use React components and we are using ShadCN components, it just makes everything so much easier. So let's begin with a code review. Let's begin with terminal implementation of this code. So here we are looking at the chats with sentiment analysis.py. So we have three files, chat with sentiment analysis.py that runs directly in the terminal, chat with sentiment analysis, fast API that runs the fast API app, and the rest of the files are for the Next.js application. So let's take a look at this again. Here is our ongoing conversation. Let's just say, and now I feel sad. We originally said, I feel so happy. And as you can see, the sentiment analysis is done in real time. Even though we could have continued chatting, here it says that it quickly transitions to sadness and it accumulates. So let's take a look at how we are doing this. We are using OpenAI threading, and we are not actually using JSON. You can set your API key here, and we just have a simple function for get streaming completion, making a call to chat completions to GPT-4 Omni with a streaming fashion, and then we have another function that actually does the sentiment analysis. This just takes in messages. And then we have the function to handle chat and sentiment analysis. Here we initialize our messages list to an empty list. And then we start a while loop. We take user input, then we append it to the messages, and then we get a streaming response. We append the assistant response back into messages, so we keep track of the message history. And then we start a sentiment analysis in a separate thread by using threading.thread. And the target for this thread is going to be the save sentiment analysis function, which we are defining here just below it with the arguments which it takes is the messages. That's it. And now we start that thread. So at every loop of our conversation, we're going to get a response and immediately start a thread, which does sentiment analysis in parallel. So this save sentiment analysis function just simply calls the analyze sentiment function, which we have seen above. Just simply, call to GPT-4 Omni with the system message, analyze the sentiment of the conversation. And then we immediately write whatever is returned to the sentiment.txt file with the mode append. And then when we run this, we get a chat loop in the terminal. So this is how the terminal version works, and will be available at Patreon. Link will be in the description. Now, next, let's take a look at implementation, and after that, we'll take a look at the Next.js implementation. I would like to take a moment to talk about the benefits of becoming a patron. As some of you may know, in the last year and a half, I've spent 3,000 hours over projects. As a patron, you will have access to all the code files so you can get inspiration and iterate quickly. Another benefit is that you'll have access to all my courses, and my most recent and most proud one, the 1000x Masterclass, teaching what I've learned on how to code fast and efficiently. Also the Streamlit course and the FastAPI course. In my Patreon, I also have tiers in which you can connect with me one-on-one. Check those out as well. So for the terminal version, the only requirement is OpenAI, and for the FastAPI, it should be FastAPI and Unicorn for serving this FastAPI server. I'll include this requirement.txt. I hope I didn't forget anything, but it should come up in any case. So we are doing all of our imports, and we are defining our app as a FastAPI app. You can put your API key here, or it will be automatically detected from your environment variables. Then we define our HTML pretty much with using Tailwind CSS. Here we create a container which is going to say chat with sentiment, and there's a user input box and a placeholder type your messages along with a button which looks like this: chat with sentiment analysis, and the input box, and then the send button. You can also send messages by enter. And then on the side, we have another div with real-time updates, which is going to get a number of messages and time elapsed, and a sentiment analysis, which we are going to populate with JavaScript. Here, we're going to establish a new WebSocket connection to localhost. It's not a secure WebSocket connection, but nevertheless. And then we get all the document elements. We need the chat box, user input, send button, number of messages, and time elapsed. And sentiment analysis, we start time, so we can keep track of time, so we can populate our HTML. And the assistant messages, and whenever we receive a WebSocket message, we get the data, and we check for assistant message, and then we just pretty much append it in the right place, and then we continually actually append to it so that it actually, since we are receiving it token by token, so we can see it here. Like, let's say if I would say hi, the tokens are, okay, I had to restart the server, but when we say hi, we see that tokens are being appended. That is being achieved here by the plus equals right here, data.content. And then otherwise we get the role of the role and then just append it. So we get to see the next, we alternate between user and assistant. And then we check for the number of messages, and then we append that. And the sentiment analysis, we append it to the appropriate place. And when send button is clicked, or if it's an enter event, then we, of course, get the user inputs value, whichever is in the user input box right here, the text area. And then we stringify it with JSON, and then we send this WebSocket.send. And then the same if it is entered but without the shift key, because shift enter makes a new line, then we instantiate the send button.click, which is going to do the same thing. And then here we are checking for the time to be displayed. So then we're done with our HTML. This is going to be returned, obviously, with our FastAPI app. If we go scroll down, this is our first route, which is defined by add_app.get. This is our home page. That's why it's indicated by a slash. And now we just simply return this HTML, which is our home page. And we have another endpoint, which is a WebSocket. This is going to establish a connection, initialize an empty list. We are going to be doing the time calculation here. And now we're defining an async function, analyze sentiment. Same idea from the terminal, but except at the end, we are sending a WebSocket that send JSON, type sentiment, and the sentiment key includes the sentiment message. And then we enter a while loop, and we continually receive data from the WebSocket, and we create a user message appended to the messages. And then We send that message back to the front end, and then we actually make our call with our messages list. And when we have received it, we send each token, since we are looping over, send it over the WebSocket connection as the role assistant and content. We input the chunk, we append it to our messages list, and then we send the length of messages here again with the WebSocket. As you can see, once you establish a WebSocket connection, you can actually send at different times all sorts of different information. Because in our HTML, that's why in our HTML, we are actually checking when we actually receive a message, whether it's a type of message or whether it's a number of messages in sentiment, because this WebSocket can send multiple messages the way it's set up. Okay, and at this point, we actually run a sentiment analysis with async.io that create task. We call the analyze sentiment function with the messages. This way, we are actually running it in parallel. This is about it. If disconnects, then we break. This is how to run the app, uvicorn.run. So this is the command to run it directly from the display button here. But yeah, so you can just run the script directly like that, or I'll show you how to run it from the terminal as well. So you first have to type uvicorn and then the name of the file, which is quite long, chat underscore with sentiment analysis fast API equals app, colon app, and then dash dash reload. And you should start your FastAPI app as well. Then here is the location. You can control click it or copy paste it. So same difference. Okay, so this concludes our FastAPI app. Like I said, this will be available along with the terminal version at the connoisseur level at my Patreon. Link will be in the description. So now let's talk about the really exciting one, the Next.js app. I would like to take a moment to talk about the benefits of becoming a patron. As some of you may know, in the last year and a half, I've spent 3,000 hours over projects. As a patron, you will have access to all the code files so you can get inspiration and iterate quickly. Another benefit is that you'll have access to all my courses, and my most recent and most proud one, the 1000x Masterclass, teaching what I've learned on how to code fast and efficiently. Also the Streamlit course and the Fast API course. In my Patreon, I also have tiers in which you can connect with me one-on-one. Check those out as well. Okay, so the Next.js app might look complicated, but a lot of this stuff actually is done when you're initializing a Next.js application. To build a Next.js application, all you need is Node.js installed on your computer. So if you haven't done it, you can go ahead and download and install Node. Once you have it, then you have a JavaScript runtime. And to create a Next.js project, you just type in npx create-next-app at latest. This will initialize a Next.js application, and all these files will be created for you. And the next word is the name of your app. So you can call it app or chat or whatever you like. Chat, you can do chat sentiment, for example, if you want it. We're not going to run this, but when you run it, it's going to ask you a few questions to use TypeScript or not and stuff like that. If you want to really actually have an easier time understanding what the Next.js app, I actually made a video. I highly recommend you that one. It's this one right here, the GPT-4 chat app built with Vercel AI SDK. This one right here. You can also watch the other video why learn Next.js. It just will make it easier for you. But if you wanted to have the easiest time understanding, I do recommend watching my Next.js coding walkthrough in my 1000x Dev Masterclass. It's this project 9 right here, these two files, the project files and the walkthrough video. I think you will give you a great idea and simplification of how to use Next.js along with the Vercel AI SDK and the V0 pretty much React component generator, which are essential. I actually didn't write maybe I wrote 5 to 10 lines of code for this. Everything was automated for me. I just had to come up with the right tools and the right prompts, and I tried to explain how I coded this in this project 9. It's not for this particular project, but for a complex chat app that actually has messaging history. I also have 8 other videos with other interesting projects and coding walkthrough, showing how I code using all the AI tools available in Cursor IDE. I highly recommend it. Do check it out. Link will be in the description. So once you've run that command, all of this stuff will be created for you. And the next step is to define our routes. So you see that we have a page.tsx, which is our main page. And this actually comes populated when you're the Next.js app. So we'll come back to this. So this is our main page. And then we have two API endpoints with the Next.js uses folder-based API structure. So it's really convenient. So you don't have to define your API routes in the code itself. So we have a chat route, which is very simple using Vercel AI SDK. This is it. This just returns our messages every time we type in this chat. Let me just say hi again. This is being returned. Everything is automatically handled for us. And this is our backend, pretty much. We don't need to start an additional server like with Unicorn as we did in FastAPI. And we have another route, which is almost exactly the same, except we are adding a system message for analyzing the sentiment. So this is our pretty much backend right here, the chat and the sentiment. So now let me backtrack, and we are using Vercel AI SDK. We are not writing this stuff, from scratch. So to install Vercel AI SDK, you do have to use a command npm create next dash app this is to create the Next.js app. You do have to do this installation step. I don't have pnpm installed, but I use npm install AI. So this will install the Vercel AI SDK, but then we also want to install OpenAI. You can also install Claude and Gemini as well. Don't worry about ZOD. I'll talk about it in future videos, but it's for generating structured data. I think maybe anyway, we'll skip that. So I ran this command, and that actually has installed the Vercel AI SDK into our Node modules. You can see AI SDK and OpenAI under right here. When you download this code, we won't have to do any other pieces because this is a fully self-contained Next.js project. As far as my understanding of Next.js, when you download this code file, it's going to be quite a large file, maybe over 100 megabytes, but you should be good to go. And all you'd have to do is start a Next.js server, make sure you are in your app directory. Here, in this case, it's called summary, which is not a very good name, but make sure you are in the summary folder and then do run dev, and this will start your Next.js project. It may take some time. We are already running it in port 3000, so it's going to start at 3001. So once this starts, you can go to this localhost, whichever address it chose, and now you'll be able to interact with your Next.js application. Just wanted to say that. So we've done two things. We've initialized our Next.js application, then installed Vercel AI SDK, which went into, like I said, if you download this code, you won't have to go through that, but I still want to explain it. And then everything else then takes place in components and the app folder. Like I said, we have the page.tsx, which is our front page, let's say. And API has two routes, chat and sentiment route. Very simple stuff right here. And then the route is almost exactly as the route.ts, except for the system message. Now, the last part of this is to talk about the page.tsx, and we will be talking about it. However, I do want to generally outline that I have generated a component with v0. I'll even show you. I believe it was this one. I think I've chosen this. And then when you generate code with v0, it gives you the code, but there's also an npx command to run this. So I've done that. When you do that, if you don't have v0 initialized, it will give you a command to initialize v0. And then so you run that command. It will initialize a component directory. And then you again run this npx command to install the components which runs this UI. And all of this is going to automatically be installed into your components using the Shatsy and UI React components and everything like avatar, button, text area. And then the thing that we care for is chat.tsx. So at this point, I actually just copied this. And I had already replaced my page.tsx with a simple chat example that comes along with the Vercel AI, which is this one. And I just simply instructed cursor chat to actually use the styling from the new component. Okay. But I very much so go into details on how I did it. in my 1000x masterclass. Like I said, it's project. If you'd like to check it out, but I still do want to give you a general idea of how I did it. So we are importing use chat from the AI, Vercel AI, that she's going to automatically handle calling to our API. And then we are importing the avatar stuff from the avatar components that were installed through the V0 and the text area and the button. And then we are using some React stuff such as use effect and use state. If you are familiar with React, you probably know, but state is to keep track of variables across the activities that takes place in our website. The best way to realize understand what this is if you've used Streamlit. Streamlit is what's called a session state. Every time you act on a page with a Streamlit app, then the entire script runs. React is similar to it, and therefore Next.js is similar to it. So use state is used to store variables and state stuff. Anything that you want to keep track of over time. And use effect is to actually initialize some functions or script at the loading of the page. And these are called hooks. Especially use effect is a hook that hooks onto something. You say, for example, here we are using use effect. We are saying, okay, do this stuff at the page load. Okay, so this will run at page load. And then when, for example, messages changes. So since we want to do sentiment analysis, we hook this use effect, all this code to everything that is in this little list at the end of the use effect after the curly braces and the comma. So if messages change, this use effect runs. If his loading change, use effect runs. So just want to, I don't want to get into too much of React stuff, but this is what's happening. Just quickly. Okay, so we are importing use effect, use state, and a keyboard event from React, which we're going to use. And we have a function, chat summary, which is going to use chat, and we to use the messages input, handle input chain, and handle submit, and is loading. All of this stuff is provided to us by use chat. If you watch my earlier video that I mentioned on my YouTube, you'll understand this better, this one. And then so use chat automatically makes an API call to the API chat route. Okay, that's great. So that actually handles our regular chat, but we also want another call to be made to the sentiment route. So then we create another use chat. That's it. And we still use messages input, except we specify their names as the sentiment message, sentiment input, and handle sentiment input change, so on and so forth. So now we have our, pretty much these are like fetch requests. So we have everything ready. And then we define a use state for last assistant message, because we're going to compare assistant messages to, we're going to say what assistant message we had last and which one do we have now, and we're going to compare. And when they don't match, then we're going to actually trigger sentiment analysis. And there's a condition right here. One of the conditions is that last message content is different than the last assistant message. So this is how you set a use state. This is the variable, and this is a function that is already provided, right? You don't have to define this function, but it allows you, when you call the set last assistant message, in this case, this could have been anything else, right? The naming wise, that it allows us to set the last assistant message. And here we say this is a use state with the type of string, right? And then we say initially it's null. So then we call our use effect and we say, okay, the last message is going to be the last message that we have received. Then we have a conditional here. We're going to check. So this is loading. It's coming from use chat. And as you can see, this is our regular chat. And we're going to use the is loading. So this exclamation mark in the beginning says where pretty much loading is done, meaning since we are using streaming, the streaming process has ended and API has returned all its information. So that is what this is checking. So that means we have received all the messages, right? When we send a message here, again, I'm just going to say hi. See, is the tokens are coming in, it's not done, and we are getting the sentiment analysis as well. When it finishes, then is loading is no longer true. Then it's good. We check that we want to make sure so if this is true and we have a last message, and if the last message role is assistant and Last message content is different than the last assistant message, which we are keeping track of using the use state. And we're just doing some logging just for information purposes. Then we set the sentiment input, pretty much using what the use chat offers. By the way, I forgot that, see, this use chat doesn't take an API argument because it by default uses APIs. Chat, okay, right here in the folder structure. But for the sentiment analysis, we want to call API folder sentiment folder. And this is where our sentiment code is. Okay, yeah. So, but anyway, so this set sentiment input uses the stuff that is already provided to us with Vercel AI SDK. So we JSON that string by the message, and then we handle sentiment input. And then these are all the stuff that is provided to us by the Vercel AI SDK. We pretty much set the input, and then we submit it to the API. And then we set the last assistant message as the last message. Okay, so we can keep track of what do we have and what are we dealing with just now. And this use effect is hooked on messages, is loading, and all of this. I'm not sure if all this was necessary. I'm still learning Next.js myself, but anyway, but this works. But I will say another caveat, this is only working every 2 messages, and I couldn't figure out why. So this wasn't intentional. If any of you figure it out, please do let me know either at Discord or at the comments. Then we use another use state for the duration. Again, see, duration is going to be the variable. We can also set the duration using the set duration method or function. I'm not sure what it's exactly called, but then we define this is the use state, minutes and seconds. These are going to be numbered, and originally they're going to be 0. Okay, then we have another use effect, which doesn't hook onto anything, as far as I can tell, but has a delay, I believe, of 1,000, meaning 1 second. And we just get date. Now we do a time calculation and we set the duration. Pretty much it. I believe we do it every 1 second. And so this updates our duration, how much duration had passed, and we store it in our use state. So we know every second which point we are at, like 1 second has passed, 2 seconds has passed. And this use effect is going to calculate, and 60 seconds has passed, and it's going to be minute 1, second 0, right? Yeah, this use effect actually is not hooked onto anything, say, because it's listed as empty, but it does return. So this is called something like clearing the state of the use effect. So if a page refreshes or something, then we clear the interval. And this handle key down is just a function to make sure that if the user presses enter rather than the button itself, we do the handle submit. And handle submit, again, is what was provided to us right here by the use chat handle submit. So moving down, then we return the component, and the rest of the stuff is just HTML and components. Since these are React components, we have already imported them. Remember, we imported the avatar image, all the stuff, which were provided to us by V0, and we installed it by running this command. So we already have all the stuff. We imported it, so we can just use them. So we use the avatar and whatnot. I'm not going to go into the HTML details. Here we say GPT-4 Omni chat. Here since we have the messages again is a attribute of the use chat. I'm using all kinds of different names for these. I'm not sure what they're called, but these are deconstructed from use chat, and messages we have access to, and we know those are the messages. So then we map over them. We check for the user role, and then we check for roles, and we put the appropriate avatars, and so on and so forth. And here we write the contents, and depending on the role, I think we are using the same avatar anyway. And here we have a text area defined, which is this text area right here, down here. And then it has a placeholder, type your message, it's right here. And on change, so the change of events that takes place on the input, which if I keep typing, for example, is handled by the handle input change, and the on key down is handled by handle key down, which we have specified one here, and handle input change is given to us by use chat. Okay. And then we have a button. If clicked, then it initiates handle submit again. That is for use chat, meaning this will trigger and send the messages to our route.ts under chat. So that's it. Oh yeah, and then we have our sidebar with real-time updates. This is chat summary, messages, and then we just put the messages dot length because we have access to that. And then here we put the duration dot minutes, and then duration dot seconds. And as you remember, duration was set in the use state. It was minutes and seconds, so duration dot minutes, duration dot seconds. And then we have the sentiment messages, and we check if there is sentiment messages that's more than zero. Then we get the latest sentiment and then print it. We could have also appended it here, right? Like we did in the terminal version. So if we don't have any sentiment messages, we just say no sentiment data available. And if we were to refresh this, then that's what we see. So this is it. This is how it works in a nutshell. And then we have some of the icons here from W3. But these were all provided again by all this stuff was provided by V0. It's just incredible. I go in depth explaining it again in my 10,000x masterclass. Link will be in the description. But this is it. Yeah, and when you run npm run dev, when you are in your app, then it will start. Go to the URL localhost 3000, and you'll have all this stuff. As you can see, we're keeping track of duration and messages. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did enjoy it, do check out my website, cohive.live, where I have 300 more other projects. And I do have the 1000x Dev Masterclass, but I also have a Streamlit course and FastAPI course. Check those out. And I also offer consultations and one-on-one meetings at my Patreon at higher levels. You can check those out at my Patreon as well. While you're there, just browse around. I have over 250 project files in my Patreon and 300 plus videos at my website, ecohive.live. I hope you enjoyed this. Do let me know what you think, and see you in the next video.